In this video I'm going to tier rank Yamaha basses that I've played and reviewed over the past few years. Hey guys, I'm Tyler and thank you for tuning back into the channel once again. If you're new around here, don't forget to hit the like button and also consider subscribing as well and hitting that notification bell. So this video is another tier ranking video. I did one last week on the Squire basses. And that's just gone out, so I'm just shooting this next video now. Not sure when I'm releasing this, but thank you to everyone who said in the comments about me getting better and well. I am 2 days after shooting that video. I'm feeling very well, so it's all good, and I was very fortunate not to get it too badly. So thank you for everyone in the comments and your concern there. It's all good, and I hope that if people do get it, they get it the way I had it, because it was not bad at all. It's pretty light, so I'm really thankful for that. So in this video I'm going to run you through 19 different Yamaha basses that I've played, owned or reviewed at different points in time, and do another tier ranking list. I think the last one went really well and people reacted really well to it, so I'm going to give you more of these. Let me know if there are specific tier list rankings that you'd like to see. But today we're doing Yamaha stuff. Yamaha, I'm a bit of a Yamaholic. I've been playing Yamaha basses for years and gone through so many different variations of Yamaha bass. I love what the company does. I love the quality of the stuff that Yamaha put out. And I've got 19 different things that I've tried, played in shops, played and owned myself, and even on gigs. I was playing a gig regularly at the Yamaha Music London stage at the Waldorf Hotel in London, and they even had Yamaha kit there that they provided, so I played stuff there on gigs as well. So hopefully I've got a wide range of Yamaha knowledge and can give you guys an idea of where I think is the best way to go if you're looking at Yamaha stuff. I've got 5 different categories, and in the Squire video there was a not for me category. With the Yamaha stuff, I'm a big fan, and I think that the quality of their stuff is just a little bit better. It's a step up. So for me there isn't anything that I would actually avoid. So I've gone for a does the job category as my bottom category, which is it'll do fine, it'll be a bass, it'll play in tune, it'll be perfectly fine for most things. The decent category, which is a little bit of a step up from that, it's a decent bass. You're going to feel like you've got a really solid instrument that's doing something and performing for you. We've got the good category, which is going to have, I think, quite a lot of Yamaha stuff in it, and it's going to be instruments that are definitely excelling in their price range or build quality or something like that. The great basses, which are going to be really good basses, but this is always going to be a personal opinion and personal list, and for me a lot of Yamaha basses get to the great category but they don't quite make it to the top one, which is outstanding, and I will kind of go through that with you. But for me, a lot of the Yamaha basses are so close but just fall short in terms of features. For me, there'll be one thing that's a little bit weird about a signature model or something like that, and that's why they'll be in the great rather than the outstanding level. But hopefully as I go through you'll understand why I've put something in that category, and you can definitely let me know in the comments below what you think is the best Yamaha bass out of the ones I've chosen, and if there are ones that I haven't put on the list, let me know and where you think they would go. Put that all in the comments below. So the basses that I've got are the Yamaha TRB JP 6 signature, so that's the John Passetucci model. The BB 1025X in this caramel brown colour, the 2025X in the white cream colour, the BB 424X bass, the BB 735A, then the BB P35. It's quite confusing with all the letters and numbers that Yamaha used to get them all out. The Yamaha BX4 semi-hollow bass, Yamaha Attitude 2 bass, the BB 5000, just the straight up BB 5000. This picture is actually one that I used to own, so that's my own picture from when I sold it. The TRB 6P2, which is also the picture from when I sold it. The BB 714 BS, the Billy Sheehan BB. The BB 2000, the Yamaha TRBX 505, the Yamaha Attitude 3, the TRBX 174, a TRB 62, a TRB 1006, a TRBX 305, and then also the BBNE2. So hopefully you will know what those are, but I'll kind of go through and say what they are as I'm listing. But here we go. So we're going to start out with the does the job category. The first bass that I think of for that is the TRBX 174. Standard passive setup, PJ, I love a PJ, you know I always say that on my channel. I think it's kind of the most versatile ultimate pickup combination. These basses I've seen in people's houses, just sat around and always pick them up and play them. And for me, I've had a pretty good experience with them. I think they're solid basses. They stay in tune relatively well. The tuners could probably do with improving. The pickups could probably do with improving. But the build quality on these is always really good. They're always in really good condition. And they seem to wear well, even though they're basses that typically I see thrown around. Does the job, not going to sound spectacular, but very solid. You could learn on one of these very happily. I've never seen one of these that's been bad or played one that's been bad. Does a great job. It belongs in the does the job category, no doubt. For me, that's kind of the only bass that is in that category. I then have the BB424, again, really solid bass. I think the pickups on these are pretty good, pretty decent. Not as good as the higher level range of this model, but these were nice feeling basses. They're no longer in production, sadly. I think they look really cool. And again, I never came across one that was ever built badly. Yamaha build quality control is just exceptional for me in the industry, and that's why this is in the decent category. It's going to do a very solid job. If you want something to gig, semi-pro, kind of weekend warrior kind of level gigs, it's gonna really fit in there nicely. And the pickups again and the sound of these basses was just a little bit better than the does the job category. We then have the TRBX 304 and 305. Similar thing really. I don't think the active electronics on these are amazing, but they do a very clear modern sound, that modern punchy thing you're kind of used to if you've heard any bass with soap bars. Maybe a little bit more open sounding with those pickup poles. Not particularly interesting tone, I think quite neutral, but definitely lives in the decent category as well. Next we go for the 714 Billy Sheehan model. Again, good build quality. Sound wasn't particularly exciting for me, and the feel wasn't great. I'm not sure I'm a massive fan of the finish on these. The finish wasn't quite to my liking, but I think you could do a very decent job with one of these basses and happily sit in your arsenal, give you that P-bass and the woofer thing, which is kind of unique to the Billy Sheehan stuff and quite cool. So again, that goes in the decent category. Next we can go for the BX4. Really cool basses to have around. Not expensive at all. Bit odd to have a semi-hollow body with a bolt-on neck, but it does work in many ways. It's got its own sound, it does the semi-hollow thing, and you've got the piezo to blend in. I personally didn't find the active electronics on it that exciting or great, but as a semi-hollow body bass to have around, and you can get them for not much money. If you want a semi-hollow, I think they are a really cool choice. Very playable necks, reasonably decent balance, and for me, I'd probably upgrade the electronics if I could find something that fit into them, but again with Yamaha basses sometimes it's difficult. They always have the proprietary pickups, and it's difficult to necessarily find something that would slot in. Solid build quality, I think it lives in a decent category. Next we're moving up to the good category, and in there going to start with the TRBX 505. Active passive, love that. Really good hardware on these. The pickups I think sound quite a lot better than the 305 model. They're more of that modern soap bar with a little bit more definition and mid-range bite. I think they're more interesting, and this bass feels nice. It's really comfortable to play, well balanced, and I think it is a step up from the other basses. It's a step up in price, and I feel like that's all reflected in the overall package of the TRBX 505. I'm also going to put the TRB62 in here. This bass I owned for a while, and I thought the electronics in it weren't anything special, but they were very powerful. You could use them, a tiny bit of bass boost, and it would take you a long way. Rosewood fingerboard and bolt-on construction. It had a nice feel, but a very thick, wide neck, and the access up at the top frets was a little bit more difficult due to the bolt-on construction and the size of the neck and everything. but a very good bass. If you could do all your fusion jazz gigs and anything like that, and chording on this bass, feel very happy, very comfortable, great build quality, heavy bass, definitely a very heavy bass due to the amount of wood and the ash construction, but I think for many people it would do a really good job. And if you want a 6 string, you can get them for not much money if you look around and try really hard to find one. It's a good introduction to 6 string, just be aware it's a massive bass. Alongside that, I'm going to put in the TRB 1006, very similar thing for me. They are pretty much direct descendants of each other. I do prefer the 6.2, being that it's a Japanese construction and it feels a little bit better built to me, but almost identical things between the two of them. I think the 1006 has a slightly slimmer neck profile and feels a little bit smaller, which is helpful, but very much the same between those two basses, and I'd probably shoot, as I say, for the 6.2 if I had the choice between them. Also in here I'm going to put the 1025X. Really good basses, very solid, great sounding pickups, much like the bigger brother of the series. Nothing to really complain about here, it just didn't have that extra special factor that I think the more expensive ones have. PJ setup, I loved it. Overall, I don't think you can go too wrong with these basses, but just don't have that quite a special feel when you pick them up and play them as the slightly more expensive models. But very good bass, going to do a great job on gigs. If you wanted that to take out and gig all year long, it would do the job spectacularly. I think now I'm going to move up to the great category. I think everything in here is definitely great, but there's a few different factors as to why they're not in the outstanding category. So first I'm going to go for the TRB JP 2 signature model, similar to the other two basses that I've mentioned in the TRB range here, but I think the JP2 is a little bit more premium. I think the electronics are a little bit more refined than the others, and the pickups I think sound a little bit better, a little bit more punchy. A very bright bass this, with the ebony fingerboard, and a massive bass, big construction, wide neck, big bass feel, but they are great basses. I just find them a little bit difficult to play, a little bit difficult to navigate, and the bolt-on construction doesn't help that too much. But these are great basses of really high quality, and if you set them up right, I think they can be really comfortable for you. To that end, the TRB 6B2 is also going to end up in here. I think this was almost on the edge of the outstanding category. It is a great bass, great 6-string bass, amazing construction and feel, massive again, really heavy bass. This one was my own bass and it is a very heavy bass, I remember that very well. So it made it difficult to play for long periods of time, but with the added piezo pickup in there, I thought it was quite exciting to play chords and things like that with the piezo. It gives it an almost acoustic guitar type sound, nylon strung type sound. And blending that in with the other electronics was quite an interesting thing to add a little bit of edge or a little bit more definition when you're chording. I thought the pickups were maybe a little bit bland on this bass, and that they could be. That's something I constantly toyed with, was upgrading the pickups to something from Aguilar or something more exciting. But an amazingly crafted bass, quality hardware, absolutely quality tuners. I always had a little bit of an issue with the single bridge saddles on this, not quite. Maybe I didn't quite get my head around them and how they should best work, but they worked well in general. It's actually on the BB82 I had issues, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But in general, really high quality bass. You could feel the quality, and it really oozed from this bass. Just the size of it made it difficult, and the weight made it just a little bit too difficult to make it into the outstanding category. And the slightly more neutral tone of the pickups gave it, kind of puts it in that category for the same reason. Having spoken about it, I'm going to put the BB-NE2 into this category, which is maybe a shock for some. It's a super high quality bass. Don't get me wrong on that. Really versatile. You can do pretty much any gig you want with this, and you really need to get in there and start twisting those knobs and learning the electronics of this bass, because it can go a lot further than you'd expect once you start doing that. I felt like it was designed to have the parametric scoop always engaged. It kind of felt better like that to me, and almost like the single coils had too much mid-range in them until you added that in, and then it kind of sounded more traditional, more jazz bass like. Really high quality basses these. I thought the things that took away from it for me were the finished neck was very sticky. really sticky, but that finish looks so cool, but it is a little bit sticky. And I really struggled with one of the bridge saddles on this. Just couldn't set it right, so that if I dug in at the bridge, the bridge would move, and it was just really annoying because I'd dig into a note for like a Jacko style line right near the bridge, and the note would kind of just not really produce because the saddle itself would move and stop it from resonating and sustaining. So that was something to look out for on that, and I couldn't really ever get it right. Maybe I was just kind of artificially doing it because I knew about it and I'd done it, and once you've done something once, you kind of repeatedly go back and keep doing it to try and fix it, and I felt like I was always constantly aware of that factor. But outside of that, I did so many gigs on my BB82 and it always performed really well. Really versatile range, versatile EQ. I think for me, I just always wanted it to have a passive option and it didn't, and that's what took away from it for me. But a great bass, no doubt. Just the sticky neck, the bridge issue, and the fact that it didn't have a passive option just were those things that took away from it for me. This bass is a bit of a legend, quite hard to find. This was the 16mm spacing one, so it's effectively a 5-string bass on a 4-string neck. I thought this bass was really cool. I enjoy the fact it's a PJ setup. I kind of wish it had a blend between the two rather than switches, but Yamaha always like to put a switch with it. Great tones from this bass. Had the original pickups in it and everything, original hardware. One thing I would say is that the tuners felt a little bit worn out, but this bass had done a lot of work, and it's a classic. It put in a lot of effort and a lot of work, and I felt like the reason I sold it was I just felt like it was a bit delicate by this point in time. I also found the 4-string neck a little bit difficult, not too difficult, and it didn't stop me playing it, but in terms of playing slap style or other styles, it is a little bit on the cramped side, under the left hand, but I played some good shows with this bass. Just felt a bit delicate to me. It's an old bass, it was from the 80s, but worth checking out if you're into your Yamahas and want a 5-string. But I think more modern Yamaha 5-strings will do a best job as a 5-string. I think the 2000 is a better 4-string bass than the 5000 is a 5-string bass, if you understand what I mean. And you could kind of tell it was designed to be a 4 rather than a 5. Next, I'm going to shoot for the Yamaha Attitude 2. Another great bass. Something about this bass that does irk me is the fact that it doesn't have a tone control for the P-bass pickup, and that is pretty much the only reason I don't own one of these myself. I love the fat neck on these basses. I think the Attitude 2 has a slightly bigger neck than the Attitude 3. I just think a bigger neck gives you so much to that tone. It's going to give you a massive amount of bass without having that artificial EQ add it. When you add it in an EQ, you get a kind of resonance around that frequency because you've boosted a specific frequency. Whereas just having a big fat neck allows the whole bass to just feel fatter and bigger. I think it sounds great on the Attitude. I think it's a comfortable bass to play despite the size. I don't think the weight's ever an issue. I think it's really well balanced. I like the neck construction with the mitre style joint, and the different joints that are used on the Attitude basses I think are really cool. So overall I would almost definitely have had one of these. I toyed with it in Amsterdam, I played it in a shop, went back 2 or 3 times while I was there, and just left without it based on the fact that the P-bass pickup tone control wasn't on that, it's on the woofer pickup. But amazing feeling basses, real great quality, and again I toy with this bass regularly. I love them, I think they're really cool, but for me, if it just had that tone control on the P pickup instead of the woofer, I think I would have it. Again, hardware is killer on these, and it's a great Japanese Yamaha bass, can't go wrong with them. Next I'm going to put in the BBP35. I played one of these out in Nashville, and I really enjoyed this bass. I thought it was a great sounding bass. Hardware is impeccable. I love the neck joint and that style of construction. I think it's a really cool thing to bring to the BB range. It's a punchy, rocky sounding bass. You could play so many styles with this bass and be delighted. I think the BB is one of those basses I could recommend to almost everyone and they would find some real good use for it. I'm a massive BB fan. But for me this sits in the great category, because for me again it's one of those little features. I'd rather it had a blend knob rather than 2 volumes and a tone, and I think it would be great to have an active option with the passive. I think it needs to have that, and to not have it on the top end model but to have it on a lower end model takes away from it for me. And having owned a 7358 at the time, I wished that the P35 had the active electronics with the passive pull. The answer to that for me would maybe to put a Sadowski preamp with it or something, but I just feel like if we're looking at the basses on their own, I'd love the P35 to have an option to have an active electronic system with the passive. They do it on so many other Yamaha basses. I feel like it's a shame not to do it on their top end model. But exceptional build, exceptional feel. I love these BBs. Again, just those couple of features that stop it from being an outstanding bass for me. I'm also going to put the Yamaha Attitude 3 in the same category. Only just, I love the 3, I think it feels great, I think the colours look awesome. I think the Sunburst version that I've seen around is also awesome looking, and great for that vintage vibe and feel. Again, same reason, I know it's a signature model, I just wish that it had the tone on the P-bass pickup. I think it would make it so much more versatile. The neck profile on these is great, a little bit slimmer than the 2, but you get the newer neck construction and join, I believe, and I think it's just killer feeling resonant bass. I love them, I think they're great. Again, just that tone control thing that takes away from it for me and leaves it as a great bass, great piece of wood. And if you want to go in there and change that up and change the pickup and the tone control setup, I would probably do that if I own one of these, but I wouldn't spend the money that it costs on a bass like this to then go and do that, if you understand what I mean. So that's why this lives in the great category too. And that leaves us with these 3 basses to go in the outstanding category. I think they're simple enough that they got it right. And maybe it says something that they're all BBs, they're all PJ setups. That's probably a bit of a me thing. It's a bit of a my opinion view, and maybe that's a bit narrow-minded, but I found that I really liked all of these basses. I'm going to start with the BB735A bass. I mean, what a bass for the price. I paid £700 for one of these, and I think its features are really exceptional for what it does. The PJ pickup combination with the active electronics, it's just the combination I would go for. It's also got a blend knob between the two, which I think really helps with the PJ to get the most out of the tones. You can have mostly J with that extra fat low end from a P bass pickup, or you can have mostly P with an extra bit of bite and cut, or just run it straight down the middle with a slight scoop, and that kind of a little bit more of low mid-range you're going to get from the P pickup. The fact that it's active passive is an absolute joy, and for me this bass felt like a bass that should be more expensive, and they should make a more expensive model of it. I feel like the BBP 35 should actually be the 735A made in Japan with the wood treatment and everything like that, and those finishes and scratch plate, but with the active electronics in them. I really think these electronics are a great thing to have, and the best of the Yamaha electronics I've ever used. They have enough that they can make a difference, but they don't completely override the tone and have massive amounts of boost, which made it very usable to my ear. And again, having the active passive and tone option with that it's just great. So I think for the price you pay for one of these, it's really kind of the gem in the Yamaha lineup right now. It doesn't maybe have that kind of last 2% of feel and finish that you want from, you know, the better materials on the 3.5, but this bass gets super close for the money, and I can't think of anyone that I wouldn't recommend this bass to. Next is the Legend, which is the BB2000. I think these basses sound great. Played a fretless version and a fretted version in my time, and it's just a really super high quality 4-string bass with a great sounding pickup. The bridge on this bass is a lovely piece of work, and it's got the detailing and all the Yamaha kind of inscription on the bridge itself. I think it looks really cool. Really solid hardware. The neck through construction feels really solid. I'm actually not a massive fan of the neck through construction, which is why quite a few of those basses in the great category ended up in the great. I think I didn't quite bond with them. I kind of like the attack you get from a bolt-on, but the BB2000s have felt really good, and you know, despite the finish on the neck, they always feel smooth to play. The ebony fingerboard's lovely, and I think the BB2000 is definitely an outstanding instrument in terms of the Yamaha range. over its recent history. And then finally I'm going to go with the BB 2025X. It's hard to go wrong with these bases. They feel super solid, the neck construction is lovely, they feel good in the hand, they're not huge but they're not tiny either. I feel like they are a real workhorse and right down the middle for a lot of people. A lot of them were quite expensive, but if you ever picked one up when they were kind of on the way down or on the way out, they came up for really good prices. And I think the P pickup in these was massive sounding, and the J pickup was again a really super punchy, thick sound. The only negative was kind of the J was single coil and would hum a little bit. And the fact for me that it didn't have a blend, it had the switch. Overall, I think it's hard to go wrong with the 2025X. They were expensive, but felt really good. The pickups were a little bit more versatile to me, a little bit more of their own thing, which I also really liked. And I think they look great, I think they look killer. I know a lot of people like the new ones, I like the new ones too, but these 2025X, that X series really was kind of the pinnacle of Yamaha bass looks for me. So that's kind of where I would place that bass out of the whole range. So that is my tier list of the Yamaha basses that I've played and reviewed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If there's a Yamaha bass that I haven't played, but you have, let me know where you would place that in the rankings, and let me know if you disagree with any of the rankings that I've put forward and my arguments for each of those. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button, and also if you like more of these tier videos, let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. My Instagram should be linked below, so don't forget to head over there and follow me there. And until the next time, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.